When we speak of the moment the empath stops chasing, we are not speaking merely of a change in behavior, a new boundary, a fashionable psychological slogan. We are speaking of a rupture in an inner cosmos, an archetypal inversion where a long-standing psychic economy collapses and a different law suddenly governs the relationship. And because this inversion is archetypal, it does not remain private. It produces tremors. It awakens panic. It exposes the hidden structures that were previously disguised as love. You must understand, the narcissist does not panic because he loses you, as the sentimental mind imagines. He panics because he loses the mirror. And the mirror, in such a relationship, is not a glass surface. It is your attention. Your attention is his borrowed soul. Your pursuit has been his proof that he exists. When you chase, you do something that appears humble, even loving. Yet, in the unconscious, it functions like worship. You orbit him. You make him central. You become the servant of his myth. And the narcissistic psyche, so fragile beneath its grandiose armor, feeds upon this orbit the way a starving creature feeds upon warmth. But the empath does not chase because she is foolish. She chases because of a wound that predates the narcissist. She chases because inside her lives an ancient vow: if I love hard enough, I can make the world safe. This vow is not a sentence she speaks aloud. It is written in the muscle of her nervous system. It is the script of childhood, often the script of the good daughter, the appeaser, the one who reads faces the way a sailor reads storms. She learned early that love is labor, and labor is survival. She learned that to be chosen, she must anticipate. To be kept, she must give more. To be safe, she must be necessary. And thus, when she meets the narcissist, she does not merely meet a person. She meets an archetype wearing human skin. She meets the tyrant king, the hungry child, the false god. She meets the psychic structure that demands offerings. And she, already trained in offering, becomes fluent in sacrifice without even realizing it. Now listen carefully, because the most mysterious part of this story is not the narcissist. The narcissist is, in a tragic way, predictable. He is the man possessed by an image of himself, an inflated persona, while his true inner life remains underdeveloped, exiled, starving in the unconscious. The empath, however, is the more complex mystery, because she has something he does not, a relationship to depth. She has access to dreams. She has a moral imagination. She feels guilt, not as performance, but as conscience. She feels the ache of meaning. That is why she stays. That is why she explains. That is why she returns. And that, precisely, is why the moment she stops chasing is so catastrophic, not only for him, but for the entire symbolic theater that kept the relationship alive. For a long time, the narcissist has lived inside an illusion that he is the sun and you are the planet, that he is the source and you are the seeker. Even when he mistreats you, even when he withdraws, even when he punishes you with silence, he expects no. He requires that you will compensate by intensifying your devotion. Your anxiety becomes his reassurance. Your apologizing becomes his innocence. Your explaining becomes his evidence that he is important enough to be decoded. In such relationships, The empath becomes a translator of cruelty into meaning. She interprets coldness as stress. She interprets contempt as wounds. She interprets abandonment as fear of intimacy. She interprets manipulation as miscommunication. In other words, she becomes the priestess of his shadow, attempting to redeem what he himself refuses to look at. She gives sacred language to what is not sacred. And she does this because she senses, dimly, to the child in him, the lost boy, the abandoned infant, and she cannot bear to leave that infant in darkness. But the narcissistic psyche is not nourished by being seen. It is nourished by being centered. It does not want your truth. It wants your orbit. So what happens when the empath stops chasing? At first, it is not dramatic externally. It may look like silence. It may look like a delayed response. It may look like an absence of explanation. It may look like the empath no longer pleading her case before the court of his moods. It may look like she simply does not appear when summoned. Yet inwardly, this shift is volcanic, because in that instant she commits a blasphemy against the false god. She stops feeding the persona. She stops paying tribute to the illusion. She withdraws libido, psychic energy from the tyrant king and returns it to the self. And the self, you must understand, is not the ego. The ego is the little I that tries to manage appearances. The self is the organizing center of the whole psyche, both conscious and unconscious, the deep intelligence that moves us toward wholeness. When an empath stops chasing, she is not merely giving up, she is obeying the self. She is being pulled inward by a force older than her relationship, older than her habits, older than her fear. This is why she may feel strange at first. She may feel guilty. She may feel as if she is doing something cruel. She may feel emptiness, because for so long her identity was fused with pursuit. Many empaths confuse chasing with loving. They confuse anxiety with attachment. They confuse overfunctioning with loyalty. And so when they stop, the ego protests. You are abandoning him. You are becoming selfish. You are becoming cold. But beneath the ego's panic, there is something else, something quiet, sacred, and terrifying. There is relief. Relief is often the first sign that the psyche is healing. And that relief, strangely enough, is what terrifies the narcissist. Because he feels it at once, he may not consciously name it, but he senses a collapse of his control field. The narcissist lives not by love, but by leverage. He does not connect through mutuality. He connects through tension. The relationship is a puppet theater where he pulls strings, affection and withdrawal, praise and punishment, promises and disappearance. Your chasing keeps the strings taut. Your chasing makes the puppet dance. So when you stop chasing, the string goes slack. And in the unconscious of the narcissist, slackness equals death. Let us not romanticize him, but let us understand him. Deep in his unconscious is an abandoned, frightened place that does not know how to be held from within. He cannot self-regulate. He cannot metabolize shame. He cannot sustain intimacy without losing the illusion of superiority. And thus he needs the external world, especially a sensitive, empathic other, to carry his unwanted feelings for him. This is why narcissists are magnetized to empaths. The empath is a psychic womb. She can hold what he cannot hold. She can name what he cannot name. She can feel what he cannot feel. And because she can, he uses her not always consciously. Sometimes with tragic automaticity, he exports his chaos into her, he projects his shadow into her, he hands her his shame disguised as her fault, he makes her responsible for his inner weather. Chasing is not only you pursuing him, it is you trying to repair his inner world from the outside. It is your attempt to prevent his collapse. And when you stop, he is forced, if only for a moment, to confront the void he has avoided all his life. So yes, he panics. But what is panic? Panic is the nervous system's recognition that its old strategy no longer works. Panic is what the psyche feels when its manipulations fail. Panic is the animal reaction to losing supply, losing control, losing the familiar pattern of dominance, and it often takes a predictable form. Suddenly he becomes curious, suddenly he becomes sweet, suddenly he misses you, suddenly he wants to talk, suddenly he offers what you begged for, suddenly he becomes present. He may even sound spiritual, he may even sound self-aware, he may speak the language you once taught him. He will say, I understand now, not because he understands, but because the mask has evolved, the persona has adapted. Yet the empath, now anchored in a new inner gravity, begins to see what she never saw before, that his urgency is not love, it is withdrawal symptoms. It is the terror of losing influence. It is the collapse of his entitlement. There is a dream image that often appears in the psyche of empaths during this shift. They dream of a house with many rooms, a house they have lived in for years, but suddenly they discover a hidden door. Behind this door is a room they have never entered, sometimes dusty, sometimes bright, sometimes filled with childhood objects. This dream is the psyche saying, you have lived in a partial version of yourself. Chasing kept you in the outer rooms, the social rooms, the rooms of duty and reaction. Stopping brings you to the hidden room, the inner sanctuary you abandoned to survive. And in that sanctuary, the empath meets her own shadow. Yes, her shadow, because her shadow is not cruelty, her shadow is power. Her shadow is the part of her that can say no without apology, the part of her that can disappoint others without collapsing, the part of her that can walk away and not die, the part of her that can let others suffer the consequences of their own psyche without taking responsibility for it. Most empaths have been taught to fear this part of themselves. They equate power with abuse. They equate distance with coldness. They equate self-prioritization with selfishness. And so they banish their assertive instincts into the shadow. They become luminous but lopsided. They become kind but porous. They become moral but easily invaded. The narcissist sensed this lopsidedness immediately. He sensed that you have an unclaimed throne inside you, and because you did not sit on it, he sat on it for you. He ruled your nervous system, he ruled your meaning making, he ruled your sense of worth. So when you stop chasing, you are not only leaving him, you are reclaiming that throne. And the narcissist panics because he feels a queen returning to her kingdom. This is not poetic exaggeration. In the psyche, symbols are more real than facts. The moment you withdraw your pursuit, you dethrone him. You commit what the narcissistic structure experiences as treason. You remove the crown from his false self and place it back on your own head. At first, this is subtle. You simply do not respond as quickly. You do not justify yourself. You do not rush to repair conflict. You do not beg for clarity. You begin to let silence exist without filling it with your anxiety. And this is why the narcissist becomes frantic. Silence, to him, is not peace. It is the battlefield where he loses advantage. Silence is where you might hear yourself. And if you hear yourself, you might remember what you have always known, that you were never chasing him. You were chasing the fantasy that if you could finally be loved correctly, the original wound would heal. You were chasing the father's approval. You were chasing the mother's warmth. You were chasing the childhood moment that never happened, the moment someone looked at you and said, "You don't have to earn your place. You don't have to be useful to be loved." The narcissist was merely the stage on which that wound played again. So the moment you stop chasing is the moment you stop trying to heal childhood through adult suffering. It is the moment you stop paying with your nervous system for someone else's inability to love. And this is where the lecture becomes dangerous. Because here we touch the real threshold, the moment the empath stops chasing. The narcissist panics. Yes, but the empath also panics, not always outwardly, but inwardly, because chasing was her identity. Chasing made her feel alive. Chasing gave her purpose. Chasing disguised the emptiness of her own neglected inner life. When she stops, she meets herself. And meeting oneself is always the beginning of individuation, the sacred, terrifying journey toward becoming whole. So, do not imagine this is merely a breakup tactic. This is not strategy. This is not how to make him regret it. No, that is still chasing, only in disguise. The true moment occurs when you genuinely stop organizing your soul around his reactions. When you stop measuring your worth by whether he returns. When you stop bargaining with the gods of abandonment. Then the narcissist panics because he cannot find you in the usual places. He looks for you in apology. You are not there. He looks for you in explanation. You are not there. He looks for you in emotional pleading. You are not there. He looks for you in guilt. You are not there. And because he cannot locate you, he begins to escalate. This is the psyche's last attempt to restore the old order. He may provoke you. He may accuse you. He may tempt you. He may suddenly become the victim. He may smear you. He may triangulate. He may attempt to awaken your rescue instinct, because that instinct has been his anchor. The empath's rescue instinct is the narcissist's leash. If he can trigger it, he can pull you back into orbit. But something has shifted. The empath, now slowly returning to herself, begins to notice a strange new sensation. Neutrality. She begins to witness his behavior as if from a slight distance. She begins to see patterns as patterns, not as mysteries to solve. She begins to recognize that his panic is not proof of love, it is proof of dependence, and this recognition is alchemical, because it turns the lead of confusion into the gold of clarity. So the moment the empath stops chasing is not the moment she becomes indifferent. It is the moment she becomes awake, and awakening is what the narcissist fears most, because a conscious person cannot be easily possessed. A conscious person has choices, and where there are choices, there is no longer domination. In the next movement of our exploration, we must go deeper into what exactly the narcissist panics about. what archetypal wound is activated in him, and why the empath's withdrawal triggers not only fear, but rage, sometimes even obsession, as if a spell has been broken and the sorcerer suddenly realizes he is no longer controlling the dream. And now we must speak of the panic in its true psychological form, because panic is never merely fear. Panic is fear mixed with humiliation, mixed with the sensation of losing dominance, mixed with the ancient terror of inner emptiness. It is the sudden shock of the ego realizing it is no longer the master of the room. You see, the narcissist's entire psychic structure is built upon a single fragile miracle: the maintenance of an image. His soul is not organized around truth, but around appearance. He has built a cathedral of mirrors, and inside this cathedral he kneels before his reflection, not because he loves himself, but because he cannot bear to meet what lies behind the reflection. The narcissist is not full of self-love, he is full of self-avoidance. He is a man who has made a religion of the persona, and like all religions of the persona, it demands sacrifices, it demands others. The empath, for a long time, has been the most generous sacrifice. She gave attention, she gave forgiveness, she gave explanation, she gave the sacred gift of interpretation, which is the most expensive gift a psyche can give to an unworthy object. She gave meaning. She did not merely stay, she translated the pain into purpose. She told herself, "This is a lesson." She told herself, "This will make me stronger." She told herself, "This is healing me." And in doing so, she unconsciously allowed his shadow to remain unconscious. For as long as she could explain him, he did not have to. But the moment she stops chasing, something unbearable happens. The empath's attention, this warm river of libido, stops flowing toward him, and because his psychic machinery depends on that flow, he feels an immediate drop in power. Like a city losing electricity, his inner world goes dark, and in the dark, he meets what he has always fled: the inferior self, the rejected child, the shame self, the fragment that never matured. This is why narcissistic panic often looks like madness. It becomes irrational, it becomes melodramatic, it becomes theatrical, because the narcissistic ego cannot survive ordinary emptiness. For the empath, emptiness is painful. Yes, but emptiness can become a womb for inner growth. For the narcissist, emptiness is annihilation. It is the threat of being nobody, and so the narcissist will do what the psyche always does when it faces annihilation. It will attempt possession, it will attempt control, it will attempt to recapture the external object that once regulated the inner storm. Now, I must say something that will offend the naive moralist, yet it is psychologically true. The narcissist does not miss you in the way a whole person misses another whole person. He misses a function, he misses an instrument, he misses what you did to his inner world, he misses the drug, he misses the anesthesia, he misses the mirror that made him look divine. That is why his sudden tenderness feels uncanny. He may return with words you have waited years to hear. He may speak of commitment, he may speak of change, he may suddenly reveal vulnerability, suddenly admit fear, suddenly speak in gentle tones, and the empath, being empathic, hears these tones as truth. She thinks, At last, the real him is emerging. But listen, the real him is not emerging. A survival strategy is emerging. A mask is evolving. Because the narcissistic psyche is not without intelligence. In fact, it is often exceptionally intelligent socially, strategically, performatively. It reads others with precision, not for love, but for advantage. It learns which behaviors unlock the empath. It learns which phrases soften her resistance. It learns which tears disarm her boundaries. It learns which confessions hook her compassion. And so, the narcissist's panic begins with sweetness. Then, if sweetness fails, it shifts. It becomes guilt. It becomes accusation. It becomes rage. It becomes contempt. It becomes punishment. For the narcissist has a secret doctrine. If I cannot control you by being loved, I will control you by being feared. If I cannot keep you through longing, I will keep you through pain. And the empath, whose nervous system has long been trained to associate pain with love, may unconsciously respond. This is why the second phase is the most dangerous. Because here the empath is tempted to chase again, not because she desires him, but because she desires peace. She desires closure. She desires relief from the chaos he is now emitting. And the narcissist knows this. He knows the empath's deepest vulnerability, her intolerance for unresolved tension. The empath often has a trauma-born urgency to fix. She feels conflict as if it were poison. She feels silence as if it were death. She feels misunderstanding as if it were abandonment. So the narcissist, feeling his power slipping, creates misunderstanding. He creates conflict. He creates emotional storms. He weaponizes the empath's need for harmony. And the empath, if she is not conscious, will attempt to restore harmony by sacrificing herself again. But if she remains anchored, if she remains in that sacred inner silence where she no longer chases, then something extraordinary happens. The narcissist begins to reveal his true archetype, not the charming lover, not the wounded boy, not the misunderstood genius, but the tyrant. For the tyrant cannot tolerate a sovereign. When you stop chasing, you become sovereign. You declare, without words, I am not governed by your moods. You declare, without argument, my attention is mine. You declare, without explanation, my energy belongs to the self. And this is what produces panic. Sovereignty breaks enchantment. For a long time, the relationship was an enchantment. It was a spell in which you believed that if you could just find the right key, say the right sentence, be patient enough, love purely enough, you could awaken goodness in him. This belief is not stupidity. It is a spiritual distortion. It is the empath's sacred instinct turned into bondage. It is the myth of redemption misapplied to intimacy. The empath often carries the archetype of the redeemer. She believes love should heal. She believes suffering should lead to transformation. She believes endurance is virtue. She believes abandonment can be prevented by devotion. And because she believes this, she unconsciously chooses partners who give her an endless opportunity to prove it. But the narcissist is not healed by being loved harder. He is exposed by being loved less. He is confronted by absence. The moment you stop chasing, you remove the narcotic, You remove the soothing illusion. You remove the emotional labor that kept his shadow hidden. And then the shadow, like smoke in a sealed room, becomes visible. Now, I will take you into a deeper layer, a layer that explains why this dynamic feels fated, why it feels like destiny, why it feels as if two archetypes have collided. The empath is often possessed by what I call the holy hunger. She hungers for soul, she hungers for meaning, she hungers for psychological intimacy, she hungers to feel the living truth of another being, and she can smell falseness the way an animal smells fire. She has an instinct for authenticity. Yet paradoxically, she is drawn to the narcissist, the least authentic of all, because the narcissist is a riddle, he is a locked door, he is the perfect object for the empath's unconscious script. If I can unlock him, I will finally be worthy. Fated, you must see how tragic and brilliant the unconscious is. It does not choose what is good, it chooses what is familiar. The empath's childhood often involved a caretaker who was emotionally unavailable, unpredictable, or psychologically complicated. The empath became a decoder. She learned to read micro-expressions, to anticipate shifts, to manage moods. She became the little priestess of family tension, the one who sacrifices her own needs to stabilize the atmosphere. And therefore, the narcissist feels like home, not because he is safe, but because he is recognizable. This is the deepest wound. Many empaths confuse recognition with belonging, so they chase what they recognize. And when they stop chasing, they not only lose the narcissist, they lose their old definition of love. They lose the script that told them love equals effort. They lose the identity of the good one, the patient one, the understanding one, the spiritual one. This is why stopping feels like death at first. It is the death of the persona, the healer, divorced sin, and here we meet the empath's shadow again. But even more sharply, the empath's shadow contains the selfish woman. The woman who does not explain, the woman who does not rescue, the woman who lets others misunderstand her, the woman who does not care if she is seen as kind. This woman has been repressed because the empath learned that approval is survival, approval is safety, approval is love. So when she stops chasing, she often enters a strange interim space, an invisible era, where she is no longer performing love, but she does not yet know how to simply be. This interim space can feel like emptiness, and it is precisely here that the narcissist's panic becomes the loudest, because he senses you are entering a world he cannot follow you into. He lives on the surface. You are descending into depth. You are moving from relationship as survival to relationship as soul. And this is the narcissist's greatest fear, that you will grow beyond the surface world where he holds power. Because the narcissist's power exists only in the realm of appearances. He can charm, he can seduce, he can perform, he can mimic, he can dominate social space, he can distort narratives, he can recruit allies, he can make you look crazy, he can play victim, he can wear masks like a skilled actor, but he cannot survive depth. Depth exposes him. Depth demands authenticity. Depth demands shame. Depth demands truth. So when you stop chasing, He feels you slipping beneath the surface. He cannot grab you there. His hands are made for masks, not for souls. At this stage, many empaths report a dream. They are swimming in dark water, and something large follows them. Sometimes it is a shark, sometimes it is a crocodile, sometimes it is an octopus with many arms. This creature is the narcissist's unconscious claim. It is the symbol of possession, of entanglement, and the dream often ends in one of two ways. Either the empath escapes to shore, or she becomes paralyzed and cannot swim. If she escapes, the psyche is declaring readiness. You can leave, mad. If she freezes, the psyche is confessing the deeper bondage. Part of you still believes you must be caught. Say, for the empath does not chase only because of love, she chases because of fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of regret, fear of being the villain, fear of loneliness, fear of emptiness, fear of not being chosen. The narcissist's panic is a mirror that exposes all these fears, because as he panics, he tries to make you panic too. He attempts to infect your nervous system with urgency again. He will create deadlines, threats, confusions. He will say, I'm done, and then return. He will say, I miss you, and then disappear. He will provoke jealousy. He will mention other women. He will recruit other eyes to watch you. He will attempt to prove he still has gravitational pull. And the empath, if she is not anchored in the self, will feel the old magnetism, the compulsion to respond, to clarify, to fix, to reclaim the sense of being wanted. But if she stays steady, if she stops chasing in the true sense, then something almost mythic occurs. The narcissist begins to chase, and this reversal is the psychological heart of your title. It is not mere irony. It is the law of psychic economy. The narcissist chases because he feels his supply escaping, but his chasing is not the same as the empath's chasing. The empath chased for union. The narcissist chases for control. This is how you can tell the difference. The empath's chasing collapses when she gains self-respect. The narcissist's chasing collapses when he regains dominance. So he may pursue you intensely, but watch the subtle signs. Does he respect your boundaries? Or does he test them? Does he seek understanding? Or does he seek access? Does he take responsibility? Or does he offer vague remorse without change? Does he honor your sovereignty? Or does he treat your sovereignty as a challenge? A narcissist cannot tolerate your sovereignty for long. If he wins you back, he begins to punish you for the fact that you almost left. This punishment may be subtle: increased coldness, increased control, increased criticism, increased withdrawal. He must restore the hierarchy. He must re-establish himself as the center again. Otherwise, he is not safe inside himself. And here, the empath must face the final illusion, the belief that his panic means he loves. His panic means he is losing. And losing, for the narcissist, is unbearable shame. Shame is the secret core of narcissism. The narcissist is not shameless, he is shame-possessed. He has built grandiosity as a defense against shame. He has built superiority as a wall around an inner humiliation. And when you stop chasing, you pierce the wall. You show him he is not omnipotent. You show him he cannot command devotion indefinitely. You show him he is not a god. So shame erupts, and because he cannot bear shame, he converts it into rage. This is why narcissistic panic can become cruel. It can become vindictive. It can become obsessive. It can become destructive. Because the narcissist must externalize shame, he must make you the problem again. He must make you wrong. He must make you guilty. He must make you cruel. He must make you changed. He must make you cold. He must make you ungrateful. 8. Anything to avoid meeting the truth that you simply stopped worshipping. And now we must bring the light to the empath's transformation. Because this lecture is not about the narcissist's panic, it is about the empath's awakening. When you stop chasing, you begin to feel your own energy return. But energy returning is not comfortable. It is not merely pleasant. It is like blood returning to a numb limb. It tingles. It aches. It burns. You begin to feel anger that you repressed. You begin to feel grief that you postponed. You begin to feel fatigue that you ignored. You begin to feel the full weight of how much you carried. And this is why many empaths, after they stop chasing, enter a period of collapse. They sleep more, they cry, they feel foggy, they feel raw, they feel as if their body is detoxing, and in a sense, it is. They are detoxing from adrenaline love, they are detoxing from hypervigilance intimacy, they are detoxing from the chemical romance of trauma bonding. Because chasing is not only psychological, it is physiological. It is an addiction. The nervous system becomes addicted to the cycle. Anxiety, hope, relief, disappointment. It becomes a dopamine prison. And when you stop, withdrawal symptoms arise. Craving, obsession, intrusive thoughts, bargaining, fantasy. This is why so many empaths return, not because they truly want him, but because their nervous system misses the familiar chemical rhythm. So the true act of stopping is not merely external silence, it is internal endurance. It is staying with the discomfort of unhooking. It is tolerating the emptiness long enough for a new identity to form. And what is that new identity? Not the woman who won, Noak. Not the woman who made him regret, I can't, but the woman who returned to herself. This is individuation. It begins when you stop trying to be chosen by someone who cannot choose you consciously. It begins when you stop begging for love from a psyche that only knows conquest. It begins when you finally recognize chasing was not love. It was self-abandonment dressed as devotion. And in the next movement, we must explore the sacred terror that arises when the empath truly becomes unreachable, not as revenge, but as wholeness. And why? In that moment, the narcissist does not only panic, he begins to experience you as an archetype he cannot control, the withdrawn goddess, the sovereign feminine, the woman who has entered her own inner temple and closed the gates. Now we arrive at the third movement, the place where the outer drama finally reveals its inner meaning. For as long as this story is told only on the surface, empath, narcissist, chase, panic, it remains merely a relationship pattern. But when we descend, we see something far older unfolding, the confrontation between the false self and the self, between possession and individuation, between a psychic vampirism and a soul that is learning to belong to itself. And I tell you, This is why the narcissist panics in a way that seems almost mythic, because what he's losing is not merely a person, he is losing the spell. A narcissistic relationship is, in its deepest structure, an enchantment. It is not sustained by mutuality, but by trance. The empath is placed into a trance where she interprets pain as intimacy, confusion as destiny, and inconsistency as depth. She is hypnotized not by the narcissist's love, but by his unpredictability. Unpredictability hooks the psyche because it activates the oldest survival circuits, the child waiting for the parent to return. And the empath, often unknowingly, becomes that child again. So when she stops chasing, she breaks a trance that has been operating in her nervous system like a hidden religion. This is why the shift feels so uncanny, because the empath does not simply stop texting, she stops praying at the altar of the unworthy, and the narcissist feels it like a priest feels the temple emptying. He feels the devotion evaporate, he feels the sacred air leave the room, and that is when he begins to experience not just fear, but something he almost never allows himself to feel: helplessness. Helplessness is the emotional equivalent of nakedness. It is exposure without defense. The narcissist cannot bear it. His entire personality structure is an armor against helplessness. In childhood, helplessness may have been dangerous. It may have meant humiliation, neglect, abandonment, or violation. So he swore a vow again, not in words but in psychic structure: I will never be at the mercy of another. And because he cannot tolerate being at the mercy of another, he makes sure others are always at the mercy of him. This is the secret engine behind his control. He must be the one who withdraws first. He must be the one who punishes. He must be the one who decides. He must be the one who holds the keys. He must be the one who is chased. Because if he is chased, he is safe. If he is chased, he is the judge. If he is chased, he is not the abandoned child. So the moment you stop chasing, he is forced back into the very psychic posture he swore he would never inhabit again. The one who waits, and waiting is torture to the narcissist, because waiting contains the possibility of irrelevance. Waiting contains the possibility of being unchosen. Waiting contains the possibility of being ordinary, and ordinary is unbearable to the inflated ego. Now, we must take a step further into symbolism, because the psyche speaks in symbols more clearly than it speaks in logic. If you want to understand the narcissist's panic, imagine an ancient king whose kingdom depends on tribute. He has a palace, he has gods, he has banners, he has rituals, and every day offerings come: gold, incense, praise. This tribute keeps the king's identity alive. It is not merely wealth, it is confirmation. Then, one day the offerings stop, not with rebellion, not with violence. They simply stop. No one comes. The temple is quiet. The corridors echo. The servants exchange glances. The king sits alone at the banquet table, surrounded by food he cannot taste. This is narcissistic panic. And why does the empath become the main source of tribute? Because the empath is not merely affectionate, she is energetically consistent. Her devotion is not casual, it is total. She pays attention to nuance, She remembers everything. She tries harder after being hurt. She becomes more loyal when tested. She becomes more giving when blamed. This pattern, which in a healthy relationship would be sacred loyalty, becomes in the narcissistic dynamic a lever of domination. The empath's virtue becomes her chain. And now we approach the most crucial point. The empath stopping the chase is not the end of suffering. It is the beginning of a different suffering, one that heals rather than corrodes. Because once the empath stops chasing, she enters a strange and sacred desert. A desert is an archetype. It is the place where the old gods no longer speak, and the new god has not yet formed a voice. The desert is where the psyche detoxes from illusion. And in this desert, the empath must confront not only her longing for him, but her longing for the role she played. Yes, because she did not only love him, she loved being the one who could endure. She loved being the one who could forgive. She loved being the one who could understand. She loved being special, the special one who could reach him, the only one he truly connected with, the one who saw through his mask. Many empaths do not realize this, but it is true. They, too, were seduced by an identity. The narcissist seduces you not only with charm, but with the implication that you are exceptional. You are not like others. No, you understand me. I've never been this way with anyone. Make certain. This is not just flattery, it is initiation into a cult. The cult is the fantasy of exclusive significance. And the empath, starved of uncomplicated love, becomes intoxicated by being chosen as the only one who can heal him. But this is spiritual pride disguised as compassion, and the desert destroys it. It humbles the soul back into truth. You are not here to save someone who refuses to save himself. You are not here to sacrifice your life so another can avoid responsibility. You are not here to be a vessel for someone else's unconscious. This is where the empath's true awakening begins. She stops confusing her sensitivity with her destiny. She learns that empathy is not permission to tolerate abuse. She learns that intuition is not a command to stay. She learns that love is not proven by endurance. And when she learns this, something astonishing happens inside her. She begins to become unreachable. Not unreachable as manipulation, unreachable as wholeness. This is the part that terrifies the narcissist most, because he can handle anger, he can handle tears, he can handle begging, he can handle drama, he can even handle hatred, because hatred keeps him central. But he cannot handle your inner withdrawal. He cannot handle your sacred indifference. Sacred indifference is not coldness, it is not bitterness, it is not revenge, it is the state of the psyche that no longer grants emotional privilege to the unworthy. It is the moment you stop treating someone's opinion of you as a spiritual court ruling. When an empath becomes sacredly indifferent, she becomes psychologically invisible to manipulation. Her buttons no longer work the way they used to. The narcissist cannot pull the same strings. The hooks fall out. The spells fail. This is why narcissists often say, with bewilderment or rage, "You've changed." I thought, "She has changed." Not into cruelty, into selfhood. And here the archetype becomes even more luminous. The empath, in this transformation, begins to embody what the ancient world called the withdrawn goddess, the feminine principle that returns to the inner temple, the goddess who closes the gates, the goddess who becomes inaccessible to the profane, the goddess who no longer pours nectar into the mouths of those who mock the sacred. In myth, this is Demeter withdrawing from the world when her daughter is taken. It is Isis gathering her scattered power. It is Inanna descending into the underworld, shedding her garments at each gate until she stands naked before death. It is Psyche walking through impossible trials, no longer naive, no longer merely loving, but initiated. And psychologically, this archetype appears in the empath when she realizes, my love is a force, my attention is a force, my devotion is a force, and it must be protected. Now, the narcissist experiences this withdrawal not as a boundary, but as a cosmic insult, because the narcissistic psyche experiences other people not as independent beings, but as extensions of himself. He has not individuated, he has not separated psychologically from the early mother image. In many narcissists, the mother archetype is still active. They unconsciously assume there must be a source of emotional supply outside them. They assume they are entitled to it. So when you withdraw, he experiences it like starvation. He is enraged. Yes, but beneath rage is grief, and beneath grief is terror, terror of the void. The narcissist lives with a secret void inside a hollow chamber where authentic selfhood should have formed. Most people form selfhood by being mirrored in childhood. A caregiver sees them, responds to them, helps them regulate emotion, grants them reality. The narcissist often did not receive this in a healthy way. Instead, he received conditional admiration, or rejection, or inconsistent affection. So he learned, my real feelings are dangerous, my need is shameful, my vulnerability is punished. Therefore I will build a false self that appears invulnerable. But the false self is hungry. It must be fed constantly. That feeding is your chase. So when you stop, the void echoes, and the echo becomes panic. Now, here is the strange and mystical truth. The narcissist panics not only because you withdraw, but because your withdrawal activates his own buried potential for consciousness. Your refusal to chase forces a mirror upon him that he cannot distort. The mirror says, silently, you are not entitled, you are not the center, you are responsible for your inner world. And this is unbearable, yet it is also the doorway he has avoided all his life. So in a paradoxical way, the empath's withdrawal is the most loving act not toward him, but toward truth, because it stops colluding with his unconsciousness. It stops enabling the myth. It stops feeding the demon. In alchemical language, we would say, the empath removes the fuel from the black fire. And that is why the narcissist becomes frantic, the black fire is going out. But we must now speak of the empath's inner battlefield, because this is where many fall back into the chase. There is a phase, after withdrawal, when the empath begins to romanticize the past. The psyche, craving familiar chemicals, begins to rewrite history. It shows you the good moments. It shows you the tenderness. It shows you the laughter. It shows you the promises. It tempts you to forget the pattern. This is the psyche's addiction speaking. And in that phase, the narcissist often returns at precisely the right time, as if he can smell your weakness. This is not magic. It is pattern recognition. He has studied your cycles. He knows when you doubt yourself. He knows when you soften. He knows when you crave closure. So he returns, and he offers a new fantasy. Not the old fantasy, he is too clever for that. He offers the evolved fantasy that he has transformed. And now we come to a truth you must hold like a candle in the dark. Narcissists often appear most sincere precisely when they are most threatened. Their sincerity is fueled by fear of losing supply, not by awakening. And because the empath confuses emotional intensity with authenticity, she is tempted to believe him. So how does the empath stay free? Not by hatred, not by revenge, not by proving anything. She stays free by remembering that the real relationship was not what he said, it was what repeated. The unconscious always tells the truth through repetition. The narcissist's promises are conscious theater. His pattern is unconscious truth. So the empath must become a woman who trusts patterns more than words. This is a brutal lesson for a sensitive soul. Empaths want to trust words. They want to believe the soul inside the other is finally speaking. They want redemption. They want transformation. They want meaning. But the self demands a higher loyalty, loyalty to reality. And reality in these dynamics is this: love that requires you to chase is not love. Love that is withheld to control you is not love. Love that punishes your nervous system is not love. Love that makes you smaller is not love. And this is where the empath begins to feel a holy anger, not the reactive anger that texts, pleads, argues, a deeper anger, the anger of the psyche defending its sacredness, the anger of the inner child finally being protected by the adult woman. And when this holy anger awakens, the narcissist's panic intensifies because he senses something in you that is new, refusal, not refusal as performance, refusal as identity, refusal as destiny. And when refusal becomes identity, the chase is truly over. Yet this does not mean the narcissist disappears. Often he becomes more present than ever, because he cannot accept the humiliation of losing his mirror. He may stalk, provoke, smear, triangulate, or attempt to re-enter your life through spiritual language, nostalgia, or crises. He may even create emergencies to draw your empathy back. But the individuating empath begins to see these tactics as the final convulsions of a dying control system, a dying spell, a dying addiction. And she does something that seems almost impossible to her former self. She does nothing. She lets the storm pass without being pulled into it. She lets the tantrum exist without soothing it. She lets the guilt arise without obeying it. She lets the misunderstanding remain without correcting it. She lets the narcissist think whatever he wants. This is the birth of psychological freedom, and it is also the birth of a new spiritual authority inside her. For the empath, in stopping the chase, discovers a secret. The energy she poured into him was her own life force. She mistook her own power for his value. She mistook her devotion for his divinity. She mistook her longing for fate. Now she sees she was the source all along. And this realization is not merely empowering, it is devastating, because it means she must grieve. She must grieve the years, she must grieve the fantasy, she must grieve the version of herself who begged, she must grieve the hope, she must grieve the innocence. And this grief is the final purification. It is the alchemical washing of the soul. The narcissist panics because your life force withdraws, but you awaken because your life force returns. And in the next movement, we will enter the final threshold. What truly happens when the empath becomes fully unavailable, not emotionally, but archetypally, and how the narcissist's panic eventually collapses into either disappearance or obsession, while the empath steps into a new inner marriage with the self, where she no longer seeks completion outside, because she has become whole within. And now we come to the final threshold, the place where the story stops being merely a relationship narrative and becomes a spiritual psychological initiation. For what truly happens when the empath stops chasing is not simply that the narcissist panics. What happens is that a soul breaks its contract with unconscious repetition. You must understand, the deepest chains are not made of the other person's behavior. The deepest chains are made of meaning. They are made of the story your psyche tells itself about love, about worth, about loyalty, about salvation. That is why some empaths can leave physically and still chase psychologically for years. They still replay the scenes, still wonder what they did wrong, still crave recognition, still seek closure, still imagine the moment when the narcissist finally understands. That is inner chasing, that is chasing as attachment to the myth. So the true ending comes only when the empath stops chasing, not just outwardly, but inwardly, when she stops handing her psyche over to the other person's shadow, when she stops allowing someone else's incapacity to become her personal obsession. This is a rare event, and because it is rare, it feels like rebirth. In the beginning, the narcissist's panic is loud, chaotic, dramatic, but narcissistic panic does not continue forever. It moves through phases. At first, it is a frantic attempt to restore control. Then it becomes rage when control fails. Then it becomes contempt when rage fails. Then it becomes narrative manipulation when contempt fails. And finally, it becomes either disappearance or obsession. Disappearance occurs when the narcissist finds new supply, another mirror, another tributary, another source of attention. The narcissist is like a man in a desert carrying a broken cup. He is not looking for water. He is looking for someone to keep filling the cup for him. If he finds another empath, another sensitive soul, another eager giver, he can temporarily stop panicking because the void is masked again. But obsession occurs when he cannot easily replace you. And here we must speak of a dark reality. The empath is often not replaceable in the narcissist's psychic economy in the way he expects. He may replace you socially, romantically, even sexually, but he often cannot replace the particular quality of your attention. Because empathic attention is not shallow, it is nourishing, it is total, it has a womb-like depth that many people do not offer. You gave him a sense of being seen without accountability. You gave him emotional labor disguised as love. You gave him forgiveness without transformation. You gave him something dangerously close to omnipotence. So, if he cannot easily find another source, he becomes obsessed. not because he suddenly recognizes your value in a moral sense, but because your absence has become an injury to his grandiosity. He experiences your withdrawal as an insult, as betrayal, as defiance, as humiliation. And humiliation is not a small feeling in narcissism. Humiliation is the trigger that can turn the narcissistic psyche into something cold, strategic, predatory. The narcissist, when humiliated, does not merely want to win. He wants to reverse the power dynamic. He wants to restore himself as the central figure in your mind. This is why he may hover, returning again and again with different masks. He may appear gentle, then cruel, then nostalgic, then spiritual. He may attempt to enter your dreams through messages, gifts, sudden memories, sentimental stories, and false emergencies. He may attempt to create an emotional gravity field strong enough to pull you back into orbit. And here is the test of the individuating empath. Can she remain in her own gravity? For when she stops chasing, she creates her own gravity. For the first time in her life, the empath stops revolving around another psyche. She stops being a satellite. She becomes a star. And a star is not loud. It is not pleading. It does not beg planets to return. It simply shines in its own place. This star-like presence is what the narcissist experiences as intolerable, because it reveals the truth he has avoided, that he is not the sun. He never was. He merely borrowed sunlight through your devotion. So how does the empath remain in her gravity when the narcissist returns? She must pass through 3 inner deaths. The first death is the death of hope. This is brutal. It sounds pessimistic, but psychologically, hope is often the empath's most dangerous addiction. Hope keeps her invested in potential rather than reality. Hope keeps her arguing with the present. Hope keeps her chasing the version of the narcissist that exists only as fantasy. Hope, for the empath, becomes a spiritual drug. Maybe this time he'll finally see me. Too sustained. Yet the self does not evolve by clinging to maybe. The self evolves by facing what is. So the empath must grieve hope, not grieve the narcissist, but grieve the dream, grieve the imagined future, grieve the myth that love can fix someone who does not want to be fixed, grieve the belief that devotion can awaken conscience. This is why many empaths cry, not because they miss the narcissist, but because they feel ashamed of how long they loved a ghost. They loved a possibility, not a person. They loved an image. That is the first death. The second death is the death of explanation. Empaths love explanation. Explanation is control. Explanation is the mind's attempt to tame pain. If I can name it, I can master it. If I can understand him, I can heal it. If I can trace the childhood wound, I can forgive the cruelty. If I can build a psychological map, I can justify staying. But explanation becomes a trap when it replaces self-protection. So the empath must stop using psychology to excuse abuse. She must stop using archetypes to romanticize dysfunction. She must stop using depth language to keep herself in shallow love. This is another brutal step, because the empath's intelligence was part of her identity. She prided herself on being the one who understands, but now she must learn a higher wisdom, understanding without access. Yes, you can understand him. No, you do not have to stay. Understanding is not a marriage contract. That is the second death. The third death is the death of identity. Because for many empaths, chasing was not a behavior, it was a self-definition. I am the loyal one. I am the forgiving one. I am the strong one. I am the one who never gives up. This identity may look noble, but it often hides a shadow, fear of being ordinary, fear of being selfish, fear of being disliked, fear of being abandoned. So when you stop chasing, you must endure a terrifying moment where you do not know who you are anymore. You are no longer the rescuer. You are no longer the healer in that form. You are no longer the woman who survives by being useful. You are simply you, and this simply you feels empty at first, because it has been neglected. But inside this emptiness is the seed of individuation. Individuation is the process by which a person becomes who they truly are, separate from the demands of the collective and separate from the unconscious scripts of childhood. It is not a self-improvement project, it is a return. And in this return, the empath begins to experience something she may never have experienced consistently before: inner containment. Inner containment means she can hold her own feelings without exporting them into another person. She can feel loneliness without chasing. She can feel sadness without begging. She can feel grief without collapsing into the other's arms. She can feel desire without bargaining. She can feel love without losing herself. This is maturity. This is sovereignty. And it is also the narcissist's final defeat, because narcissistic power depends on your lack of containment. It depends on your emotional leakage. It depends on your compulsion to repair tension. It depends on your reflex to clarify. It depends on your fear of being misunderstood. When you develop containment, you become ungovernable. Now, at this final stage, something subtle happens in the narcissist. If you remain truly absent, not physically absent only, but psychically absent, he begins to feel something he has avoided: mourning, not moral mourning, not heartfelt mourning, but a primitive mourning, the shock that the object is gone and cannot be controlled. A child screams when the mother leaves the room, not because the child is evil, but because object permanence is not yet developed. In a similar way, the narcissist often lacks emotional object permanence. When you are absent, he cannot hold you inwardly as a stable image. Instead, he experiences your absence as abandonment, as annihilation, as betrayal. This is why he panics, and this is why he may smear you, because smearing is a way of controlling the inner narrative when outer control is lost. If he can make you bad, he can preserve his grandiosity. If he can make you crazy, he can avoid self-reflection. If he can make you the villain, he can remain the hero. But the individuated empath no longer participates in the smear narrative. She does not defend herself to people who are committed to misunderstanding her. She does not explain herself to those who benefit from her confusion. She does not chase her reputation in circles where truth is not valued. This is one of the most divine acts of maturity, letting others think what they want. Because the empath finally realizes, my worth is not decided in other people's courts. This is the collapse of the narcissistic spell, because narcissistic manipulation relies on the empath's obsession with being seen as good. Her goodness becomes her cage. The narcissist exploits it. If you leave, you're cruel. If you speak up, you're dramatic. If you set boundaries, you're selfish. And the empath, desperate to remain good, remains trapped. But once she becomes loyal to truth rather than to image, the cage dissolves. Then she sees, I do not need to be good in his eyes. I need to be whole in my own soul. And here is the final mystical insight. The relationship between empath and narcissist is often a shadow marriage. A shadow marriage means you are bonded not through conscious love, but through unconscious complementarity. The empath carries the capacity for feeling. The narcissist carries the refusal to feel. The empath carries conscience. The narcissist carries projection. The empath carries depth. The narcissist carries surface performance. They fit together like two halves of a broken psyche, and as long as the empath remains unconscious, she believes the fit is love, but it is not love. It is psychic compensation. So when the empath stops chasing, she breaks the shadow marriage. She withdraws her projection. She stops projecting the Redeemer onto herself and the damaged prince onto him. She stops projecting destiny onto trauma. She stops projecting sacred meaning onto cruelty. And then she does something astonishing. She turns inward and begins the real marriage. The inner marriage is the union between the conscious ego and the self. The empath begins to integrate the shadow part of her that can be firm. She begins to integrate the masculine principle inside her, the animus, not as harshness, but as clarity. She becomes decisive. She becomes structured. She becomes protective of her life force. She stops bleeding in the name of love. And with that integration, her outward relationships change completely. She no longer chooses partners who require chasing, because chasing no longer feels like love. It feels like danger. It feels like the old script trying to resurrect itself. Now, you may ask, does the narcissist ever awaken? Sometimes, rarely, something like awakening happens, but it is not caused by the empath chasing harder. It is sometimes catalyzed by the empath leaving, because leaving confronts him with consequence. It removes the protective cushion. It forces him, potentially, to meet the self he has avoided. But you must not confuse potential awakening with your responsibility. The empath's awakening is not dependent on his transformation. That is the final liberation. When you can leave without needing him to understand, when you can be free without needing him to apologize, when you can heal without needing him to regret, that is when the chase truly ends. So the title is not merely about narcissistic panic. It is about the empath becoming so whole that she no longer needs to be chosen by the wounded. It is about the empath discovering that her love is sacred and must be given to those who can hold it with integrity. It is about the empath becoming loyal to the self. And when this happens, the narcissist panic becomes irrelevant, because the empath no longer measures her life by the reactions of the unconscious. She measures her life by alignment, by peace, by inner truth, and this is the final blessing. When you stop chasing, you do not lose love, you lose illusion, and in losing illusion, you finally return to the only love that can never abandon you, the love of your own soul, held in the arms of the self